Hey, David.
Okay.
When in doubt, turn it off and on again.
I know turning things on makes it better. So can I have your attention just for a minute? I'm Chris Shaver. I chair the Conservation Commission, and I'm just going to take about a minute to talk about the pamphlets that you found on your seat. At this point, it could be under your seat. Anyway, it's in your vicinity. Good. Yes. It's a brochure that tells you a little bit about the work the Conservation Commission does, and it also, and probably as importantly, gives you the first ever trail maps that the town of Webster has produced. Okay, can you all hear me?
Back up. Yeah.
Back up.
Yeah, right. Come on. Not too much. Right there.
Don't let them mess with you, Chris. They're just having fun.
Okay, how about this?
Hey.
No, come up a little. Right here. Okay, it's conservation I want to talk about. The reason that all of us love this town is because of the natural beauty of this place, and the Conservation Commission helps to conserve that natural beauty. We need help on the Conservation Commission. So there's, what's that?
10 o'clock time.
Oh my God, he's pulling me off the stand already. There's going to be a sign-up sheet at the desk up front on your way out if you have any interest at all in helping the Conservation Commission. Please sign up. We'll contact you and invite you to one of our meetings. You can meet us. It's a thrill, and find out what it is we do. And we really appreciate any help that you can give us. Thanks. Oh, well, thank you so
much. John Clark. I know this is not the Academy Awards. When the music starts playing, you're done.
You don't have a buzzer?
I won't need one now.
I'll be brief, very brief. Thank you for all of you that voted for me. I recognize we didn't have a great turnout, but we had a good turnout. For those of you that couldn't make it here, I fully understand. Responsibilities come first. And for those of you that chose not to vote for me, guess what? I'm going to represent everybody ethically, equally, and appropriately. So no fear. With that being said, I'm looking forward to working with my two new colleagues over here. And big feet to fill, or big shoes to fill. Maybe that sounds better. Sorry, big shoes to fill. He's leaving us and moving on to some other things, but definitely looking forward to that. Public safety. The school is across the street. An educator told me here on Tuesday. We have 88 students over there. We need to be concerned about them. The direction of education. We're paying for education, but making sure we're getting the best for them to move on to further education. So I'm going to be on top of that. Public safety. I'll be working with those folks. And other things that we're doing just generally. Webster's running pretty well right now, don't you think? I do. So let's keep it going that direction. Happy to jump on board with that. And you know, I've been asked to do this for, I don't know, the past 10 years. My mind's in the right place now. I was a pretty busy guy before that, but we're in the right direction. So the other objective is looking at all of you to make this a really nice little town to live in. And I think we can work together to do that with our colleagues up here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Last but not least.
No, I am least.
Sure is not least.
Pull it way down. Ginny and Russ Wright here today with us?
Right here.
There they are. I'd like them to stand up, or Russ to stand up. And I want to recognize Russ and Ginny Wright. They have been monitoring the Blackwater River for bacteria and a host of other issues that come up with water quality, which is part of public safety. They do this quietly, invisibly, and without any gratitude, and it's time to thank them for doing it and for helping to monitor and keep our rivers safe. It's a huge resource in town, and I want us all to join me in thanking them. 30 seconds.
It is 10 a.m. Well done. We normally start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and while there was a protocol, I violated it. I'm asking Staff Sergeant Gordy Welch to lead us, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise, so the people that are able to, and take your hats off, face the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two things that we want to, housekeeping things we want to get out of the way, but the first thing, which I think is one of the most important things, is we acknowledge our, the person who the town report is dedicated to. Marty Bender, would you please stand up? This will be the one thing that I probably read to you today, but I think this is worthy of being read out. This year we are pleased to dedicate the town report to Marty Bender. We are indeed the beneficiary of all the volunteer time that Marty dedicates to Webster. Marty is the chairman of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, which he has served for many years. He is a trustee of the library, also acting as library treasurer. Speaking of the library, he is the driving force behind the monthly movie night. I would like to give a shameless plug to those movies. They are excellent, and they give you snacks. He offers a variety of movies to appeal to a wide range of interests. He has chaired the Energy Committee and was proactive with the acquisition of the town's solar arrays. In addition to his work with the town, Marty volunteers at the Pierce Manson Concord, the Indian Museum in Warner, and teaches Hebrew at the New Hampshire State Prison. He is indeed a busy man and hard to keep up with. Marty, thank you for all that you have done and that you will keep doing. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge our staff here. If you, the staff would stand. Volunteers, if you're on a committee in this town, please stand. And I want to acknowledge the police and fire for your work for our town as well. Do you have something you want to start now? The board has a few announcements.
All right, hopefully this is good, and I'll set this here. Can everybody still hear me okay?
No.
All right, so we'll go this way. So we have the usual announcements. Roads have been weight limit posted for mud season, so please be aware of that. That may affect some deliveries of various items and or heating oil. There is the winter parking ban still in effect until April 1st. As many people have already been finding, fire permits are available at the back. Please make sure that you have them as the snow is now vanishing. That is required for anything, even just a small campfire. Property inventories have been sent out, and so you can bring them to the office, leave them in the drop box at any time. They are due, as always, by April 15th. So if you haven't received yours, please go find our assistant town administrator to make sure you have a copy and can fill that out. As many of you saw, Clothespin Bridge continues to move forward with construction because you can't go across it anymore. It almost doesn't exist. So that is expected to be completed by November, hopefully a little bit sooner. Timelines do shift a little bit, and it started a little bit earlier than expected. And you can ignore the last one. We do not, I believe, have a straw poll, but maybe. For the other announcement, many people continue to say, hey, how do we get notified about things? And right on the website, down on the left-hand side, there's a subscribe to news button. And so if you click on that, you can get subscribed to anything, whether it's new books and DVDs and programs at the library, or whether it's an announcement of this, or the road being out, or something similar. So all of that is available there for you to easily grab. Of course, we do now have an active sign in front of the safety building. Most announcements that will show up on the website will also show up on the safety building sign. And so hopefully that helps to make everybody more informed and to make sure that everybody knows about stuff more easily. With that, I'll turn it back to our moderator for the moderator's rules. These are all copied. Everything that you're going to see here for text, for the rules and warrant articles, is copied directly out of your town report, so you can read it that way as well. Thank you.
The moderator rules are also in the town report on page 11. So I would call your attention to that. There are a couple of things that I'm going to vary from a little bit. You never want to send your moderator to a meeting with 43 other moderators. For a lot of reasons I won't go into, but I'm going to make a couple of suggestions here, and I've asked you to approve them as well. You don't need to move on them. There is absolutely no rule or requirement or anything in writing that says you have to read the article before you open it for discussion. You have to move on it. But it was actually recommended not to have it read aloud, because if it's misread, you get all kinds of issues. All right? And so if it's coming from the board, something recommended, we can assume that, and I will name them, that it has been moved and seconded. And it will be moved and seconded as printed in the warrant article. Now, if you don't like that, hold on. Number 11 in your rules. Upon appeal of any, you can appeal anything I do. If you don't like a decision I made, you can appeal that, and it is a simple majority to overturn what I. Another thing that's not in here, if you wish to amend an article, when you get to the microphone, you amend it first, and then you speak. You don't speak for 3 minutes, make an amendment, and expect to speak for 3 more minutes. That's not a way to get 6 minutes of airtime. If you have questions that you need answers, that's fine. Ask your questions, get your answers. Go to the back of the line and put your motion together, and come prepared to make the amendment first, and then you get to speak. Are there any questions on the rules so far as I've spoken to and as I've written in the town report? All in favor of adopting the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I would also now entertain a motion to allow non-resident staff people to speak at this meeting. Only registered voters can speak here unless we allow them to, and we need staff to have that permission.
So
Michelle.
Michelle Tremblay, so moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Bork, right?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle Tremblay and Mrs. Bork. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Here we go. First article was on Tuesday. Elections of officers. And we had 4 people running for 4 different positions, each one unopposed. John Clark, select board winner, with 120 out of 139 cast votes. Marty Bender got 133 out of 139 for library trustee. Matthew Cummings got 135 out of 139 for cemetery trustee. And Dee Blake is the trustee of trust funds for a 3-year term. She got 133 out of 139 votes. I would like to thank the volunteers, the supervisors of the checklist, the ballot clerks, the town clerk and the assistant town clerk, and all their work for that election. More importantly, I would like to thank them for the work for the last election, the one in November, where we had 1,302 people vote. We had 91.7% of registered voters vote. Wow. Your volunteers were here from like 6:30 in the morning till midnight, collecting ballots, doing the job, and then counting ballots. So I thank them for all their work. On the warrant, Article 2 was recommended by the planning board. It is printed in your report. It's already been voted on, so I see no reason to read it. You already voted on it. And it passed. 112 voted yes, 24 no, out of 139 votes cast. That leads us to the business of today. Does the select board have you want to talk about the articles first?
You can show it and then I'll talk about it either way.
I thought you wanted to do them all at once.
Yeah.
So why don't you do that now?
Okay.
Select board's they have a few articles for appropriations, and they would like to talk about them all at once, because it makes more sense to do that, and then we'll entertain them one at a time.
Sounds good. All right. And a second here. It's not showing me. There we go.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator, is there a way to shut off the front bank of lights? Because
Yeah.
it's really difficult to see that.
Oh, much better.
That's why Staff Sergeant Welch was positioned right there.
That's good.
And your tax dollar hard at work.
I apologize. I just made this flip in a direction I was not intending. Let's try this. Okay, I have a bunch of stuff written, but apparently I can't see it right now while I show it to you. So we're gonna go a little bit off the cuff here. The first item is there is an error in the town report budget. This is only the very last item of that. And so I've shown that to you here. What's in the budget is at the top. The corrected amounts are below that. Basically what happened is some things that don't come from taxation got added in on both last year's and this year's to make those bottom line numbers not quite correct. So the actual correct numbers are showing that everything is down 0.2%, not down 0.45%. And I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to talk about it, and I'll bring it back up in a moment, so that way I can actually see what I'm talking about. But one of the things that's really important here is to discuss the biggest expense every year, particularly these past 2 years, roads. We've all heard the complaints about each of our favorite roads not getting the attention we might hope for. But that doesn't mean our road agent isn't busy and doing a good job, nor that he has no plan. In fact, we have one of the better conditioned town road systems in New Hampshire, according to the Central Regional New Hampshire Planning Commission, that did the condition survey that can assist our road agent in choosing priorities. That's part of the map that you saw up there as part of that process. You can see what this looked like and how some of these red and yellow roads have been taken care of since, and some green have been maintained to stay good.
The map is
Second,
up.
put that back up again. Yes, I'm sorry, but for technical reasons, it's not allowing me to see what I wanted to say to you while showing the slide. So I'll put that there for one more second, and I can put that back up again later as well. To put that into perspective, our town has traditionally run around $2.5 million to be raised each year when accounting for inflation. And last year, we spent almost $856,000 on roads from the budget and the trust funds. That's a little over a third, and not including bridge engineering work. While we're not closing any funds, this year concludes our reorganization of how road work is funded. In order to make everything as easy to see as possible going forward, normal road work and preservation is all in the operating budget now. The Road Preservation Fund is now used for preservation projects that are known and saved for, such as expecting roughly $100,000 for chip seal in 2 years. That's why you'll see $50,000 put into it now. The Highways and Roads Capital Reserve Fund is for reconstruction projects, with some examples for upcoming years being Lake Road, Detour Road, and portions of Little Hill Road, as you saw red on the map. And no, they're very red if you've driven over them. That fund may only be used for projects in the capital improvement plan, which those are. As many of you are aware, we spent a lot on roads in the year prior as well, including some unexpected rebuilds from flooding. We were able to do that without making use of the Highway Expendable Trust Fund, which is designed to handle unexpected overages. But we continue to put funds into there for an emergency. There is also the Highway Equipment Fund for maintaining equipment or in the future purchasing equipment should the town decide to do so. Lastly, there is the Bridge and Culvert Improvement Fund. This was used for replacement of White Plains Bridge a couple years ago and has had a lot of culvert work done from it as well, and is now being used towards Clothespin Bridge. You may wonder why though, since we've told you that the bridge construction is now covered by state and federal funding. There's two reasons for this. The first is that Webster is still required to pay the 20% of engineering services from the original 80-20 state agreement, though the majority of that is done at this point with just some construction oversight at this time. The second reason is that Webster actually pays for the construction and then gets reimbursed by the state. I'll spare the accounting details, but we will essentially be on a circular pay, get reimbursed cycle as we go through construction. You'll likely hear us talk about that a lot more next year when we will discuss what to do with the money that came back and likely ends up in the unassigned fund, as it can't go back into the capital reserve fund directly, nor are we likely to need it to. Going back to the overall budget and the way that things work. For the budget itself, there are a few notable changes. Basically, personnel costs, so anything that is pay or insurance related, is up. You can see that everywhere, including in the police department where we're hoping that we can fill an empty police position still. The code enforcement officer portion is up, and that is in hopes that we actually find a code enforcement officer instead of just having a code inspector as we have currently. And of course, all of the inflationary items are up as well, which is goods, services, contracted services, and those sort of items. We do have a couple cautionary budget items that we've put in there as well. And so those would be things, for example, in this building, we are very happy and thankful that the heating system is working flawlessly now. That was blowing itself up and destroying everything last year. So that is now all functioning perfectly, but it also includes heat pumps in it. And while this should be far more efficient for us, that should also increase the amount of electricity that we use, but decrease the amount of propane we use. In order to hedge our bets and make sure that everything will be good, since we don't have a full year running on it, we've increased electricity significantly and decreased propane a little bit, because we don't want to end up in a budget shortfall like somebody else you may have heard about. Speaking of the different kinds of funds, we've thrown out a lot of them. And so I wanted to take a second to explain the four big ones that matter to us here in town. The first one that most people are familiar with is the general fund. This is the money for the yearly operating budget. We get revenues, we have expenses that come in and out, and so we spend money and we get taxes to pay for it. Trust funds are special accounts for specific purposes. You see those in the remaining warrant articles for example, the road preservation fund and similar items. And that allows us to save over a long period of time so that we can flatten the amount of taxes from going up and down all over the place, but also so that we don't have to do things like other towns where they take out bonds all the time for everything. The contingency fund is just that. It's a fund in case of emergency. And you'll hear more about that as we get there for the contingency fund. But if we use it, we use it. If we don't, it just goes back and we use the same money the next year for the contingency fund. The last is the one that most people don't really understand, and that's the unassigned fund. Now, the unassigned fund, and I'm gonna grab my notes again for a second here, sorry. The unassigned fund is somewhat of an accounting concept. It's not really an actual bank account, but it can be thought of in two ways. The first is as a cross-year bucket. So anything that comes in will continue to the next year. And the second is to think of it as providing operating cash flow. So tax revenue comes in after the operating budget money is already spent. There are only two ways to spend money from the unassigned fund. One is to offset taxes. So that's where the select board can vote to use some of that to artificially lower the tax rate at the end of the year bill. This was done during most of the years of the pandemic, which slightly skews some of the next graphs you'll see. The second way that
You can't see the graphs.
yes, you'll see them in a second.
Okay.
The second is to have a warrant article use it for funding instead of using new taxes for funding. When you see phrasing such as not to be come from taxation or something of that nature, it's usually coming from the unassigned fund. This year you're going to see that for the dam bond payment at the end, and we expect to do that until it is fully repaid. So one of the things that we constantly hear is you just keep raising the amount. It's going up, it's going up. And that's true. We hear complaints about it all the time, and we don't like it any more than the taxpayers do, because we are the taxpayers too. However, there's something important to keep in mind, and that is that inflation has also been rampant over the past few years. And of course, this is one of the reasons why people care so much about a budget going up, because everybody's feeling it. Everybody's feeling that they have to pay more. And so everybody's more sensitive to higher amounts. However, if we look at the expenditures of the town adjusted for inflation over all of these years, this is showing all of those same budgets in 2025 dollars. So you can see we're actually pretty flat the whole way through. And that's very thanks to the fiscal responsibility of the way that the town gets run and the way that we've had all of these funds set up in order to make sure that we can do things appropriately. Now, the problem here is, of course, taxes. Everybody's really concerned about taxes, not really the budget, but the effect that the budget has on taxes. And there are a number of assumptions in this. I won't go into all of them, but consider this back of napkin math from me. The municipal rate is accurate, for as accurate as we can ever make it, and it'll be really close. The school tax rate is taken from Merrimack Valley School District's annual report, but adjusted because, as many people may have heard, their budget was reduced. They said that they thought that budget change would be about 20 cents on the tax rate. So that 20 cents is shown here. It's less than 20 cents less than what they had projected in their annual budget. The thing I would note is that the state aid tax rate is missing. That is because the school includes it in their rate in their pamphlet. So that's why it's not there, but the total is still accurate. The county said that they were going up 7.18%. They don't, from taxes. They don't tell us how they apportion that out from town to town specifically. We're trying to give a projected tax rate. So I simply took last year's and added the 7% to it. So this will give you some idea that even though we go down in town, your overall tax rate is probably going up. One of the things that makes this not completely accurate is that there are valuations and equalizations that happen by the state. I won't go into the voodoo of that. We've talked about that extensively at past meetings for reevaluations. If you have further questions on that, I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards. With that said, I think that covers all of the different budgetary items and areas, and so we'll bring you back to the actual warrant article.
I think that was very well done. Article 3. It is, this is where I'm changing, and you can overrule me if you want. But it is moved as written in the town warrant. It's moved by Chairman Hemingway and seconded by Mrs. Blake. I'm kind of assuming you have no further comments. Do you have any more? Okay. Are there comments from the floor, questions? This is your meeting.
I have a few questions. If I may.
I-
Can I stand there or can I stand here?
stand at the-
I don't want to
You
stand
stand at the microphone, you
Sure.
tell people who you are. and
Not a problem, yeah.
Do you have your red card, your green card?
I do.
Yeah, make sure you,
right there. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name's Dave Collins, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a Pillsbury Lake resident. I've lived in town for about 20 years. So thank you to the select board for the presentation as far as the budget. Certainly understand that when we look at certainly costs, we understand that costs are going up. I certainly understand that. I've sat here and supported many things over the years, and I continue to support that. When I'm talking about things here is a common sense approach to things that I think the board is lacking in some common sense use in the last couple of years. So let's talk about a couple things. There's going to be a bunch of numbers I throw out. I'm going to try to take my time and go through this because it's important to understand this, because this is to my point of the article. So quickly, my background. I've been an insurance agent for 30 plus years. I'm a New Hampshire licensed advanced emergency medical technician. I've been for 28 plus years. I serve on the board of directors for Pennacook Rescue Squad. That is a 911 ambulance service serving Boston, Salisbury, and Canterbury. And I'm also chair of the Town of Webster Joint Loss Management Committee. What that committee does is we review basically the risks of the town. We review essentially risk management, trying to obviously keep obviously so we don't have liabilities to the town. We look at insurance claims and review all insurance claims over that. I've been on that board since 2012. So first thing I want to state first and foremost, I absolutely support public safety in this town. You've heard me over the years, for those of you that have seen me, I support the police department, I support the fire department. I always have, and I will continue to. But I believe there's some common sense items that aren't being talked about. So when you look at your budget, I want you to look at page 25 and 26 of your budget. That covers the police and fire. So I know there's always been questions over the years about the police department budget. The current police department budget, and when you've got the police department budget going, and I thank you, Chair Hemingway, for showing that, you need to look at not only the working budget, but you need to look at the money raised by capital reserve funds, because that's the total amount of money you're raising for them. So, in the current budget, basically, $353,000, and then if you go to the warrant article, which is $23,000, the budget for the police department is $376,572. Now, keep in mind, we have a part-time police department. Yes, there are full-time officers, but realistically, we don't have officers available 24/7 all the time. There are times they're not available. You call the police department, you might hear about it the next day, depending on the emergency. That's what we are, that's the town we live in. I'm okay with that, but I certainly support the police department. And last year, per their report in the town report, if you want to dig into it, if you read the reports, there were 894 calls. Now keep in mind, that's lower than some of the prior years, but they also had one less full-time officer. So again, that's fine, I'm fine with that. I haven't had a problem with that. We've discussed that in nauseam over the last few years about basically the breakdown. The reality is though, when it comes to the police department's budget, it's payroll. You have full-time officers with benefits, that's what the payroll is. So now I'd like to go on to the fire department budget. So the fire department budget, when you look in there, the main budget is...
Mr. Collins, you got about a minute and a half.
Yep, that's fine, well, I'll get there. Yeah, I wish you would have said that at the beginning, but that's fine. I'll get there, that's fine, Dave. You can listen to me or not, and I'll ask the people if they want to hear from me or not. So fire department budget, the main budget is $115,836. But you need to also add in the ambulance services for $37,260. And if you pass your capital reserve amendments, that's $152,500. So actually for the fire department, the total budget is $305,596. And that is based on, per their report, 227 calls last year. So this is my point. My point is about using some common sense, and I'll get here right now because obviously I'm probably not going to be given the time to talk about this. So let's look how the calls break down. The calls break down, 60% of the calls are EMS calls. I'm here to remind you that for the EMS calls in this town, and this has been this way for decades in this town, the Webster Fire Department will show up, Hopkinton Ambulance or Pennacook Rescue or some other mutual aid ambulance is transporting you. That is the reality of it, that's not going to change. We have a small department of volunteers. They simply don't have the time to take on the calls, so that's where it is. So when you look at that $37,000 from the Hopkinton Fire Department, that is a number that is at some point in the near future going to go up. Departments are being pushed for medical resources. I can tell you that with Pennacook Rescue, we are pushed for resources, and because of that, costs are going up substantially. There is no town in this region that actually pays that low for an ambulance transport. And my question is, and I've got a couple of questions, so I'll go to the questions right now. So so I don't waste anybody's time. I'm sorry I'm doing that. So my questions are is this. So when it comes to the emergency and medical services for the town to the board, do we have a written contract with the town of Hopkinton? To the board, you know? Does anybody know?
Our town administrator says he believes that is not the case.
There is no written contract. So, the Hopkinton Fire Department could come in tomorrow if they're in a budget crunch and say, we're gonna charge you $100,000, or we're gonna charge you $150,000, whatever the number is. We have no way to control that. There's no control over that, and what you're not hearing from is you have not been hearing from the leadership of the department about talking about this over the years. This is a big concern. This is a tax implication concern. Beyond that, we actually have, I'm sorry.
Time.
Yeah.
So you don't want to hear any more questions?
No, Mr. Collins, time out.
Let's do
If you'd like to speak, there's a line, form a line up the middle, make sure you have your card, but if the line is not, if there's nobody in the line, I have leeway. You've given me leeway to let him go. When I interrupt you, sir, the clock stops. So when I'm telling you the rules, which we talked about, you may not have been here.
Yep, I understand.
When I'm telling you the rules, I am not costing you time.
Yep,
You got that?
I do.
Okay, you can have your questions.
Okay.
Do you have a motion to make?
I'm not there yet. I have several questions.
You cannot,
So you don't want my questions?
no. If you're gonna make a motion, you make it first, and then you talk about it. That's the rule. Did I not put that in at the beginning of this meeting?
So the motion, there is no motion. What I'm discussing is the budget. I'm
So
discussing
you
the
have no
budget.
motion. Okay.
There's money within the budget. That's what I'm discussing, is money in the budget.
All right, you're
Okay? All right. So I'll get here and I'll get here quickly. So, let's talk about basically what we have paid for the Webster Fire Department over the last many years. In 2018, we spent over 2 years $60,000 for new radios. Now these radios are portable mobile radios. They are basically multi-hundred channel radios. They are radios that basically, they have more radios right now than they actually have department members, and they're not used by department members. There's banks of radios that sit at the station. In 2020, we bought new Scott air packs. That was a reasonable issue. Yes, because you know what? You need breathing apparatus to go in and fight fires, I understand that. Currently, we have 15 packs according to the chief of the budget hearing, and there are basically 12 spare bottles, more than the people that are certified for the Webster Fire Department. And now we get to, and I can see it right across the street, our new tanker. So, we voted through many years ago in the capital improvement plan of the town, and if you look, and all you gotta do is dig in, you just gotta spend the time to do the research. In the capital improvement plan of the town, in 2019, they put in $440,000 to replace a tanker. However, when it came to the budget hearing, I found we're not replacing a tanker, we're just getting an additional tanker. So my question is to the board is, why when we're replacing a tanker, why are we not replacing a tanker, a vehicle, obviously if it doesn't need to be replaced at 24, 25 years old, why are we replacing a tanker that could probably go easily another 5+ years? Why aren't we replacing it then? And if we're not, if we were, it was a replacement vehicle, my follow-up, I'll leave it at that, I'll ask the question, I'll shut up from there. Go ahead.
Sure. So I'll address the point about not putting it back, or I should say not trading it in, and that we basically wouldn't have gotten much of anything from it because of how old it is.
Who said so?
We have heard that from the chief. We've also heard that from others that work with large equipment.
Did you go to other dealers and actually ask, you know, did you look out there for pricing on what a used tanker that's in good condition, 1999, 2000, 1900 gallon tanker with a 1,000 gallon per minute pump? Did you go out and look at that?
I have not personally done that. However, we did ask for things such as trade-in values when we looked at quotes ages ago when the original contracts were made to get the new tanker. And the reason for getting the new tanker in the first place was because the old one couldn't necessarily be relied upon, couldn't always be fixed easily and or quickly, parts availability, and a whole host of issues for that sort of thing if you're needing to rely upon it. The reason for keeping it beyond it not having a whole lot of value for trading is, like we have done with many other things, we like to extend the value of how our equipment and keep it for a long time. And so by using the old apparatus when we can, or in certain situations where it may even be more efficient to do so, for example, when we have mud season, that preserves the new one to last all that much longer.
So what happens when that tanker does go down the road, and now you have a tanker that is a substantially higher gross vehicle weight, substantially, it's a completely different piece of apparatus. It is not similar to what was there. It's a much larger tanker, it's a much heavier piece of apparatus. It's a piece of apparatus that requires a lot more skill drive. You truly need somebody with a CDL and a truck driver to be capable to drive that. That's the reality of it. That's a large vehicle. So my question as a follow-up is, you did not the tanker, you went to the dealer. So did you go to any other sources? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this. So,
This is
I'm
argumentative.
gonna stop you right here, okay?
yeah,
We're talking about this year's budget.
we are.
And you can disagree with legal and authorized and all the decisions the select board makes throughout the year. That's not what this meeting is about. This meeting is about Article 3 right now and this year's budget. You can disagree with what they're saying. You can disagree, that comes down to the.
It relates to the budget. If the
You haven't-
if the
you
tanker
haven't
had been
really-
sold, the money
you
would have went
haven't
back
related-
in.
You haven't related to it yet. What you're
Okay.
doing is you're questioning decisions they have legally made. They are under no obligation to expend funds voted. There's a separate body. This belongs at a select board meeting if you're not happy with decisions select boards are making. Tie it to the budget now, please. You have a,
Yes, so I will tie it to the budget here. My question to the budget is, if you did not trade the vehicle in, there was no money going into the budget to basically either go into a capital reserve fund to reduce taxes. That is my point I'm trying to make, sir. That's, and so when I'll just state this to you, you may not agree with this. You go to a normal selectmen's meeting, when you look through the year, there are 2 or 3 people beyond the body heads going. There's 50, 80 people here. This is the town discussing basically expenses we have in the town. I'm taking now and future expenses. So again, I'll move on. Okay,
no, go to back of one.
okay, you want back, that's fine, we'll stand over there.
Back of one.
No, I'll stand over, that's fine.
Can you turn the mic, please, face the floor?
Yeah, face the floor. Face your audience.
Heather Fairchild, 4 Tyler Road, I'd like to move the question.
We got somebody standing in line, that's my prerogative. Mr. Clark.
I'd like to move the question too, with a couple of comments. Dave, I have a great deal of respect for you. We've been up here mutually through the years, but I think I've seen a couple of emergencies too, and I'm not gonna go over my body. With that being said, when you're sitting there watching your house burn, you know what I wanna see? I wanna see the Webster Fire Department, I wanna see Webster Fireman, and I wanna see those 2 tank trucks coming like a bat out of hell up the road, put out my fire. That's what I wanna see. And I know many of you in here feel the same way.
It won't be the ones putting out the fire.
Yeah, I know about the mutual aid, and I'll tell you this, I followed Tower 1 up Long Street, it's a 15-minute run. Anybody that's in the business, as you know when I do, it's 30 seconds to 30 minutes. That's the highlight of the incident, the critical incident. That's when people locally need to get there. And that's what I appreciate in that fire department. I've been down to the fire department. I don't care how many tankers they have, just as long as they can get up the street, get across the roads with enough water to put out a fire. I think our fire department does an excellent job, and I'm gonna be getting in an argument here, that's not my point. My point is, reality is reality. We live in a rural town, we live in a place where water sometimes cannot be readily accessed. And when you've got a house in some of those rural areas, you wanna see all the water coming down the road we can get. Thank you, let's move the question.
Well, I'm gonna enforce the same rule on you as I did on him. You can't come up here and speak for 2 minutes and then make a motion, folks. You come up and you make a motion so that we can get it seconded and discuss it. So we don't listen to 15 minutes of opinion and then get a motion. Get up here, you either make a motion or not. But we're gonna tie it to this article, to this budget. Yes, sir.
Order. Motion was made before Mr. Clark spoke.
Yes.
Yeah, you wanna go back up and make the motion again? It was my prerogative not to accept it because somebody was in line. Are you in line? Mr. Collins, are you in line?
I am not, mate, let him move the question, you don't wanna hear from me, it's okay.
Heather Fairchild, 4 Tyler Road, I would like to move the question.
Mr. Clark, have you seconded that?
I will second.
Moved and seconded by Mr. Clark. 2/3 have to vote positive on this. 2/3, not half, 2/3. All those in favor of moving the question, raise your card. You can say aye if you want. Aye. All those opposed, raise your cards. You can say no if you want. The ayes have it. Remove the question. The motion has not been amended. The article has not been amended, so it is as written in your town warrant. All those in favor of adopting Article 3 as written in the town warrant, please raise your card. You can say aye if you want. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. I've got my gavel here. If you remember Harold Janeway as moderator, this was his gavel. So I went and asked Betsy if I could borrow his gavel. It'll go back to the Janeway family after today, but this was in honor of Harold. I meant to say that. I'm going to use this set because I don't carry the same way. Article 4.
Can I move, take a motion? I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 2. Susan McGinnis, 10 Kennedy. 3, I'm sorry, yes.
All right, yeah, motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3, seconded by Michelle Tremblay.
Michelle Tremblay, Longiver Lane, second.
All those in favor of restricting reconsideration, say aye. Raise your card. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. It cannot be reconsidered today. Article 4 is moved and written in the town warrant by Chairman Hemingway and seconded by Mrs. Parrott. Board have any further comment?
Yes, but there's actually an error in the warrant here. It incorrectly states history to get $100, but that was intended to be the Bicentennial Trust and is an added minor placeholder, so that fund is not forgotten as the years go forward towards that celebration. As such, I would move to correct this error in warrant Article 4 by replacing history with the Bicentennial Trust.
Okay. History is replaced by Bicentennial Trust.
Isn't that the 250th rather than bicentennial?
Suspect.
No, let's not call questions
I'm sorry.
up here. Is seconded by you. Now, you're speaking to the change, to the amendment.
Dorothy Bork, Winnapocket Road. I think that was supposed to be for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the country rather than bicentennial, which we have already passed.
Good point.
Thank you for your point. I would point out that this is for the bicentennial celebration of Webster. So this is for 2060.
Y'all hear that answer?
Yes, that is.
Yeah, this is for something 36 years down the road, but it's there. At $100 a year, we'll have a big party in 2016.
They won't be here today.
Yeah.
We have to, are there any more discussion on the amendment? We're just changing the name of that, that fund. All those in favor, raise your card, say aye. Aye. Any opposed to the amendment? Okay. Now, we're discussing the article.
Yeah. So I have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, 3.5.
So I'll take less time now. You know who I am. My name is David Collins from Centennial Drive. So I have a question before I make a motion because I want to make sure.
No, motion.
Oh, that's okay.
I need to know because these are capital reserve funds. I need to know how much money's in our capital reserve funds, folks. I'm asking the question. Is that appropriate?
If there's nobody in line, it's very appropriate.
Okay. So I'm assuming the board or the town administrator. So what I'm looking for is in the basically on page 70, there's all the capital reserve funds. Those numbers, excuse me, I'll get up to the mic here. Whereas of 12/31, has there been any substantial withdrawals out of those accounts to date in the last 3 months? Particularly, I'm assuming with the fire truck. Is the fire truck paid for last year? The tanker?
I believe the fire truck is in this year, but I'm not sure of that right now. But
Can't hear you, Dana.
Use the mic.
Yeah, Dan, use the mic.
I think I've got it. Fire truck, I believe, was paid for in this year.
So that amount of 760 is not correct.
No, well, that's correct as of December.
Right, so what it is as of it today, Dan, and I'm trying to get an idea here, so.
Right, so the fire truck is $442,000.
All right, so we're down to about $320,000 in that fund. Okay?
Agreed.
And as far as you're aware, were there any other funds that were depleted since 12/31, this report?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. So, I want to make sure I get it correct here on the warrant. I'm getting there. Give me a second, can I look at my numbers? Go. All right, so. I've talked about, I'll make my motion and I'll talk to the motion. So I basically want to make a motion under Article 4, under Fire Department Emergency Apparatus, to cut that amount from $115,000 to $40,000. And I also want to cut the mobile equipment fund from $10,000 to $1,000. And here's my rationale for it. I talked about the trucks again, so now I'll talk to my motion. Here's the rationale for it. So right now, the Webster Fire Department, prior to purchase of that tanker, had 2 engines, 1 tanker, a forestry, a boat. I'll actually look to my articles here. A forestry, a boat, a boat, an ambulance. Now we have a command car, or a car to do wires down calls, which again was a decision not made by this board. There was also a trailer for a Cascade that was not made by this board. We have an additional tanker, which the costs are not made by this board, and actually that's to extend the life, so thank you, that makes sense, sure. And we have these additional items. So the question is, and why I'm cutting these capital reserve funds is, because the reality is, I believe when it comes to the fire department, they've had it very good for a long time. They continue to purchase a lot of equipment that is nice and wonderful, but it's not necessary for the mission of the Webster Fire Department. I think I'm cutting that because I think it is time for the town to take a serious look at that budget. That's why I'm cutting. Did I cut it down to 0? I did not cut the operating budget, folks, and I'm going to speak to a moment to that. I did not cut the operating budget because it's not fair to the department members to cut them for the normal operating expenses. What I'm talking about is capital reserve purchases, and that's why I'm making that motion to cut those articles. You can agree or disagree or ask questions. I'll leave it at that. I'm done.
I need you to be more specific on what you're cutting.
I am cutting, I already said. Fire Department Emergency Apparatus from $115,000 to $50,000. And I am cutting the mobile communications from $10,000 to $1,000. And the reason I'm doing that, again, is because I think we have more equipment than we need. It's unnecessary. Mobile communications, we have bought a tremendous amount of radios that realistically we do not need. There, if you look in the line item on page 76, if you look what's in that capital reserve fund right now.
Right,
It's there. All right. I won't question it.
The numbers I wrote down, no, don't go away, don't go away. The numbers I wrote down the first time, I know what you just said. Give me your numbers one more time. Because you gave different, I believe what I heard. Am I alone on that? That's right. I heard 150 to...
115,000 to 50,000. Fire Department Emergency Apparatus. Fire Department Mobile Communications, 10,000 to 1,000. That's my motion.
You're all over. 115 to 40 or 50?
115 to 50,000.
115 to 50, okay. And the second?
10,000 to 1,000
10,000
on
to
mobile
1,000.
communications.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion? Is there a second for that? In fact, I apologize to you. We didn't have a second before I let him talk.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Heather. Fairchild Tyler Road. Is there any other discussion on this proposed amendment? Emmett, would you like to come down and say a few words?
Well, you can come. Emmett Bean, Fire Chief. I see where Mr. Collins is going because of the taxes. But the fire trucks that we have at the firehouse now, it's a 2004, it's 20 years old, and the CIP is supposed to be replaced in 20 years, so that fire truck is up to be replaced. But I've been working with the CIP to run that truck for another 5 years because it's still in good shape. So in 5 years, the fire truck that you're going to be buying is $1 million for a fire truck that we paid $350,000 for when these were new. So you can cut that all out, but in 5 years, you're gonna need $1 million to replace the fire truck that should be replaced, that the way the CIP has it set up to be replaced this year. Because it's a 20-year cycle. And trying to save the town money, the truck that needs to be replaced doesn't have all that electronics in the DEF fluid in it, and it's dependable. Then the next engine that we have is a 2012, so 20 years. So,
Chief,
yes, sir.
define CIP for people.
Thank you.
It's capital improvement, correct?
Yes.
Plan.
Of the town.
Of the town. And we
Thank you.
work close with them with that, and they've been great. Was it last year they moved it up? So there'd be enough money. So that's all I have to say. If you do away with it, then it's gonna be quite a shock in 5 years, you're gonna need $1 million. If I'm the chief, whoever's the chief, it's the plan. Thank you.
Mobile communication was the other one.
Now, the communications, we set that up because of a couple of years ago, to add more money to that. It had to do with the computer stuff that's all gonna be coming around, correct? Am I on the right page with that?
I can speak to that.
Okay,
This is
let Rob.
This is the radios.
Yeah, I'll let Rob speak to that. Thank you, Rob.
Who are you, Ron?
Rob Walensky, Winnapocket Road. Been on the department for a number of years, been in the fire service for 20-plus years, full-time captain in Hooksett. Very familiar with emergency operations and so forth, was the chief here for a few years as well. So some of the discussion seems like we're blending here. If there are issues with the department, issues with the select board, that needs to happen at those meetings. But as far as the capital improvements plans goes, that's basically a savings account for all of us. This stuff does need to be replaced over time. And to talk about the communications, everything now is going from analog to digital. That's just the world we live in. The capital area is now putting up towers to receive digital transmissions back and forth. The digital makes it encrypted so that emergency operations, whether it's police or fire, people can't listen to, hey, my neighbor's choking out his wife, which is good. We need to be protecting folks. So with that being said, radio improvements, they have a lifespan. They go out of date. We can all argue that it's probably just a moneymaker for those companies in a lot of cases, but they have an end of service life. So the Motorola radios that we did replace, the other ones were no longer supported back when they replaced them, and these ones are gonna come face that too. Keeping things as long as we can, maybe getting less of it, those are discussions that we could have and the select board should have. But as far as replacing, as far as planning for that, we as a community need to be doing that. It's appropriate, it makes sense. We have increased, being on the planning board, I have advocated to increase the apparatus funds, and honestly, 115 is probably even not where we should be. That should probably be 150,000. But we can't go there overnight, and we're just trying to do what's fiscally responsible for the community. So that's really what Emmett's trying to do here, is to just plan so that when this apparatus does go, and it will go, and unfortunately, that 2012 engine that we bought, when Pouliot was chief, was $308,000, I believe, back then. That same engine today is $800,000, and in 5 years will probably be $1 million plus. So that's where we're going, and if we only put $40,000 a year into that, or $10,000 a year into that, we'll never get to the price of that. And then we'll be coming before you and saying, hey, not only do we want to put 40 in the capital reserve, but we also need $600,000 so we can buy it this year, which is gonna skyrocket the taxes for that year to year. So this budget plan helps us so that we put aside enough, and then when it's time to appropriate, like we did with the tanker, nobody felt the $400,000 on the tanker this year, did you? That's why we have that savings plan for that. So it makes sense using it that way. And again, the discussions of how many pieces we need, what type of apparatus we need, those should really be happening at the select board. And come out and talk to them. They'll listen to you. You're part of the town. So that's where some of that back and forth should happen. But I do recommend, like I said, as a planning board member as well, this is where we should be, and we should actually be a little bit more than that, but here's at least a modest amount that we're asking for to support apparatus, radios, and all the other capital reserves, whether it's police cruisers, that kind of stuff. This conversation goes, if I'm going over time, I can stop. But this conversation goes back and forth between budget committee, planning board, select board. It's not just one person's opinion on it. And trust me, it gets pushed back, whittled down. What makes sense? Can we do this year? So it's not willy-nilly. It's not what we want that year, the best of the best type of stuff. So just so you have a little bit more background on it, how that works. But I support the numbers that are there.
Thank you. Sure. Okay, there's nobody, and are you?
I'd like to speak again, if I may.
The line's over, help me out, all right? Because I don't know what your intention, don't roll your eyes. Help me out. I don't know what your intentions are standing over there. Stand here.
Just trying to stand away to give you a look at the floor. Fine, no problem, Dave. David Collins again. So again, people think I'm here to try to gut the fire department. I'm not, in any way whatsoever. What I'm going to the point is, going to Rob's point, we have a capital improvement plan. You're absolutely right, Rob, we have one. However, the town's not following the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan that was started in 2019, was done and redone in 2022, says right in it, replace old tanker. We didn't replace the old tanker. We replaced it and kept it. In the last, if we approve this budget as is, and you don't want to approve my warrant, that's fine. Just understand, for the fire department, over the last 5 years, the town of Webster will have raised and put in capital budgets $724,000. That's literally a large chunk of your budget this year, folks. And I'm not saying that we don't support departments for future apparatus. I'm saying that the plan is not well laid out, the plan is not working, and basically the board makes decisions during the year that greatly impact here. They basically make decisions to add vehicles, to keep vehicles, that greatly impact the future of basically the cost of this town because it's built into the budget. That's the reason I'm making that motion. People think I'm against the fire department, never been against the fire department. I have no axe to grind. They're a good group of people. What I'm looking at is common sense approach to spending that the board is not paying attention to. The board has heard from me, and they're not. That's why I'm here, Dave. So that's all I've got to say.
We've all heard from you. Okay, there's nobody in line, so there's no need to move the question. I'm going to move the question. All those in favor of the amendment, and I'm going to read, if it's okay with you, just the amended part. I don't want to read all the others because there's no question, just the amended part, and I want to make sure we've got this right. Fire Department emergency apparatus is being amended from $115,000 to $50,000. Fire Department mobile communication, requested $10,000 to $1,000. And we already passed the bicentennial, right? Thank you. Okay. So all of you in favor of that amendment, raise your card and say aye. All opposed? Raise your card and say no. No. Amendment fails. Okay, any other discussion on Article 4? Okay, Article 4, as printed in your town warrant with the one change of history to bicentennial trust. I can't read my writing. Bicentennial trust. All in favor? Raise your card, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Raise your card. Well, okay, it passes. As Harold used to say, it's a vote. I asked him, what does that mean? I don't know. I make it up as I go along. It's a vote. Article 5. Moved as written in the town warrant. It is moved by Chairman Hemingway and seconded by Mrs. Blake. Do you have any further comment on this article? Okay, are there people waiting in line to discuss this article? I'll count to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All in favor of adopting Article number 5 as written in the town warrant, raise your card, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes. It's adopted. Yes, I know what you're going to do. Please do it.
Yes, I just want to make a motion. This is Michael Bork, 588 White Plains Road, whatever. Article 4 and 5, I'd like to restrict them from reconsideration.
Couldn't hear you.
He wants to restrict from consideration. Was there a second? Paul King seconded. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Articles 4 and 5, raise your card. Aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is restricted to reconsideration at this meeting. We're on it now, Article 6. Select Board recommends it. Article 6 has been moved in the town warrant, as written in the town warrant by Chairman Hemingway, seconded by Mrs. Herrick. Any other conversation from the board?
Not unless people need an additional.
Are there questions from the town? Any comments to be made on Article 6? All those in favor of adopting Article 6, raise your card.
Aye.
All those opposed? Article 6 is adopted. Article 7, as written in the town warrant. It is moved by Chairman Hemingway and seconded by Mrs. Blake. Any further comments? Board would like to make further comments.
So just one quick thing to point out here. In previous years, you have seen this as the same normal thing, raising and appropriating. But that would add to and take from your taxes of the current year. The reason that this is slightly different, as mentioned previously, is this is coming from that unassigned fund. So this is not going to add to your taxes this year. This is taking from money that was already collected in years past. And that's why the typical phrasing is no further taxation, but that's the way that this particular one is working. We generally don't like to do a whole lot of that for things like offsetting of taxes or warrant articles that we would normally fund in that way every year. However, with the dam bond being just about over, we felt that it made sense to do it that way for the next couple of years. We'll definitely have the money in the fund to do that. And then that will bring us back to the normal tax rate once that is done.
How many years left?
I believe it's 26 is when that's done. So this year. Next year.
20 years.
One more year. Any discussion? Any questions? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor, raise your card.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is adopted. We're done with that beginning.
Yes. We're now
Okay.
into petitions.
Number 8. Moved as written in the town warrant by Chairman Hemingway and seconded by Mrs.
No.
Herrick. Does the board wish to comment on this and refer to someone from the?
No, this is petition.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it says recommended 3-0.
Well, we recommended it because we had to vote on it because it's fiscal based.
Yeah, so that,
But the presenters would, and the first and second would be the petitioners.
I got you, but for the motion,
Take the
you
mic.
guys made the motion.
Please use the mic so we can hear you.
We're just talking shop up here. They had to vote on it to get it on the warrant article, but they voted on it to get it to the warrant article, so they've moved it, seconded it. You can vote against it if you want, but Mrs. Bork, you're coming up to speak.
I am. Here's my purple card. Dorothy Bork, Winnapocket Road. I think a lot of you had this piece of paper for the Historic Society on your chairs.
In the mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No.
Get closer.
How about that?
Nope.
Okay, now? Hug it. Hug it. Ooh. But then it echoes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I think most of you had this piece of paper. If you came in later, there's a copy on the table over here if you'd like one. This warrant article is actually about releasing the history book fund to the Historic Society to publish the next history book, which is due out 2033 or later. And we are getting pretty close. We don't have the funds now. We either do or don't. This article will release it to the general fund and then turn around and give it over to the society to publish this book. It will be restricted to just that. So if you have any questions, I will be glad to try to answer them. But basically, there's one correction in this piece of paper, and that is Betty Pearson was actually a member of the building committee, and she and her daughter recommended this particular money be turned over to the society. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator, can we just remind how much money that is? I don't have it. How much money is it?
It's about 10,000.
Thank you. That's all I need to know. I don't need to see it.
Any other questions, discussions?
Dave, I just want to make sure, to Dave's point, I'm using the mic. I just want to make sure that because this is a petition warrant article, it is the petitioners that would need to first and second it. The recommending is just because we had to vote on whether we would support it or not.
Which is my point. We're good. We're good.
I move it.
Dorothy Fork, Winnapocket Road, purple car. Yes, I make a motion to accept.
Unless you want to overrule me and have another vote on another vote. It's been recommended and it don't work.
Okay, don't worry.
Are we ready to vote on this article?
Yes.
All those in favor of this article? Any opposed? It has passed. It is adopted. Now, this article has not been recommended by the board to this body. So it is, Mr. Nesbitt, are you ready to stand up and make a motion?
I am, sir.
If I may quickly interrupt, it's not whether it's not whether we are saying that we don't recommend it. It's that because it has no fiscal impact to the town, we don't vote on it.
Good morning, everyone. David Nesbitt, Tyler Road. This article this petition is addressing the issue of education freedom accounts or school vouchers. The intent of these is to take money raised by our taxes so that people who want to go to private or religious schools or be homeschools can take money from the state account. Now, certainly education, like anything else, one size fits all, doesn't always work. So there's certainly room for private religious schools and homeschooling, and some people do a really great job of it. So this is getting a little bit complicated, so please bear with me. I'll try to be as brief as possible to explain this. So the money was originally intended, the program was originally intended when it was conceived to be for people who were just above, at the poverty level or just a little bit above. The estimated cost of this program from the Bartlett Center, which sponsored this back in 2021, was about $500,000 for a year. That first bill actually turned out to be about $8.1 million, so substantially more money than anticipated. And okay, so that was back in 2021. To date, the state has further expanded the amount of people who have access to this fund, which is currently $28 million. The anticipated change coming up with House Bill 115, which was passed by the House on Thursday, is now going to the Senate, could raise this to 500% of the poverty level, which would be about $64 million a year. And if it's universal, would be closer to $100 million a year. So it's a huge increase. So to date, about $75 million has been diverted from public schools to private religious schools or homeschooling. Now the big problem with it is there's very little accountability for this. The firm that manages this does not report back to the state how the money is being spent. We also know that the firm charges 10% of the actual money as a fee for doing this, which is why this is incredibly expensive. So, just in terms of explaining the cost, the state figures it's about $4,100 per student. The actual cost to educate a student for 1 year is approximately $20,000. So the state spends about $4,000. The public raises through our local property taxes the remainder, so $16,000. The cost, the vouchers actually are $5,024, so more money is actually being out there. So you're losing money from the educational trust fund. That money's not going to the schools. That means to continue to pay for things like fuel, transportation, the fixed costs, teacher salaries, et cetera, you have to raise that money again to compensate. So basically, we're spending a lot of money, much more so for schools that really have no accountability. Public schools, you have to have certified teachers, you have to go through training programs. You don't have to do this in public, in private or religious schools. So what we're asking is for the town to basically express an opinion to ask the state to keep it at the lower level, so it's at a lower poverty level, to not expand this to essentially bankrupt our system. States that have done this to a big degree, like for example, Arizona has a $1.4 billion deficit in their state budget, largely due to expansion of school vouchers. In Ohio, their budgets have exploded by $1 billion. We're expecting possibly as much as $100 million a year. So with that, I'll yield to any questions.
How about we do some housekeeping first? I was talking up here when you came up. We need a motion to put this on the floor. Did we get one? I don't think we got it. I thought you were going to make a motion. Did you make a motion to put this on the floor?
I did not. I'd make a motion to...
Well, let the next guy do it. Just let me follow.
Okay.
You may not want to. But if you want to talk about it, you need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Seconded by Dave Collins. Thank you.
But I have comments as well.
Thank you.
For well over 50 years, New Hampshire has had the distinction, all but 1 or 2 years, Mississippi might have beat us, for being the lowest funding of education. And it shows. Take a look at your most recent tax bill. You'll see the breakout. County, town, school. Where we talked about the fire department and some of the other expenses we have. But take a look at what we're spending for schools. And it's going to get cut again this year. And who knows how much is going to be cut in the next year or two. So keep that in mind. I agree with the accountability issue and as well as the expense that's going that way.
Mr. Cummings? I know who you are.
Oh,
Would you tell us?
Cummings, White Plains Road. I've been here a few times.
Mr. Hemingway, I think we know who you are.
Dave Hemingway, Clothesman Bridge. I just wanted to make sure that I was in line as a normal person because I'm going to speak to this, but I didn't want it to seem like it was coming from the board.
You should stay at the mic.
Sorry about that. So I'll start by saying that unfortunately this issue is very politically partisan. And I don't believe the town should generally be taking partisan positions. Even though this topic really should be a discussion and an adjustment of the program at the state level, because a lot of the points are highly nuanced, just as were presented. And that's the way it should be, rather than a partisan politics lightning rod. That said, I've had to think about my position on this quite a lot, as while I don't agree with every point made in the article, some of which are countered by charter schools, including the state's VBAC system, I also see issues. Both of my parents were lifelong school teachers. I grew up in Massachusetts with what had been a pretty decent school system, but at one point, my grade school education, the local public schools simply couldn't serve me effectively anymore. While not done in exactly the same way down there, my family made use of a new and recently passed program at the time that they simply referred to as school choice. I went to a different school in a different area with some of the money transferring with me to the new school to slightly offset the costs of having me. I went from being one of the best students in the school system to barely being average at the new school. I was challenged, engaged, and involved rather than bored, checking out, and getting into mischief and trouble. I thrived in that new environment, becoming one of the better students in the school again by the time I left several years later. I can confidently say that had my family not had that choice, I would have called further schooling a joke and never taken it seriously again. Shortly after, I instead ended up taking college classes full-time under another voucher program called dual enrollment down there that sent my funding to the nearby college for tuition during my last high school years. And then later graduated with multiple majors and minors and have had a very successful career. Without those voucher-style enrollment choice programs, I wouldn't be here today. So while I agree that there are multiple issues around the implementation of education freedom accounts, I'm definitely for the concept, and I'm proof that the concept is both needed and can work. So for the multiple reasons I've mentioned, I'm against this particular article.
Mr. Cummings, would you let someone else behind you speak who hasn't spoken yet? Thank you. No, you don't.
Sorry,
Tell people who you are.
Jane, just waved your Meadow Road. I'm one of the people that signed this petition, and the reason I signed it is because it doesn't ask us to discontinue the vouchers. What it does is it asks us not to express an opinion that it not be expanded until there's full accountability and transparency and sustainability plan about this. So I signed it because I thought it wasn't partisan, but rather was just asking the state to do what it should do before it expands it even further. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Charles Picciselli, 223 Deer Meadow Road. Since you brought it up,
Up to the mic, yes.
since Dave brought it up, I have a few questions about the school districts he was changing from and to in Massachusetts. Being from Connecticut, I have a general idea. Now, the school system you went to was a better funded school system? Yes. And in Massachusetts, everything's better funded than New Hampshire?
No.
Well, I think that's a question that we can't answer.
I will say that there shouldn't be back and forth,
Yeah.
but I'll also second that that was when I was in grade school, so I can't really comment on specific finances.
Yeah, I think that's
on much more
General knowledge, yes, it was. But, so it really isn't, he's not comparing apples to oranges here. Like, we are the lowest funding state, we're the second lowest funding state. And so this is going to impact your property taxes, because these vouchers have to be paid. So that's all that's.
Yeah, that's good, yeah. I'm sorry, I should have. Now, George? We keep putting people up there.
Oh, don't do that.
Midgets get to speak too, just fine with the Sobel. I don't want to debate the private versus public school issue. I'm a product of either, and I don't think anyone cares about whether I'm proof of anything. What I want to say is that there needs to be accountability, and it's entirely appropriate for this town body to be able to express an opinion about how its taxes are spent in Concord and how those policies are set that determines how our monies are spent. And for my part, I'm going to be voting for this article because it's not a debate about public versus private or anything else. It's a debate about accountability, and it's a debate about how we're able to survive with the tax system that Concord has determined for us.
State your name, George.
I'm going to get it right this time. George Cummings, West Nice Road. Don't think of it as partisan. It's the money, and it's your tax bill. I don't remember exactly what it is that you'll find if you do the calculations on your most recent bill. Something like 62, 64% of the tax bill is either direct or so-called state education, which is the legislative solution to the Claremont suit somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 years ago, and we're just as bad off now as we were then. Second,
Let's go, because we have to vote on it. I think no one else is in line. Okay. Mr. Gavin, you're in line.
I'm going to be in line.
All right, come on.
Not everybody wants to see this shirt, so I'll cover it.
My name is George Gagnon, 380 Gold Hill. I don't know if this goes hand in hand with this, but I don't know where everybody is with the voting sets available. But as far as I'm concerned, if we're gonna ask those questions, we should also ask why all this gambling that's in this state and the money that was supposed to go to the schooling, what happened to all that money? Because there's a ton of people gambling, there's a ton of new stuff coming in here that should have never come in here, and it never got used to that. So when is that money gonna go to the school system? Because that's a big deal.
I guess my answer as moderator is you have every right to submit your own petition and get 25 signatures and address that issue as well. Right?
Just throwing it out there.
We are on this petition that we do have signatures on, okay? Now, I'm gonna ask for a vote, but because I'm kind of anticipating this being a little closer than all the other votes. So I'm gonna ask you to, all of them in favor to raise your card and hold it in the air, and if it's not overwhelming, what do you think? Okay, now, all those against? Okay, it passes. It passes. So we don't have to count. Thank you. Now, before we close, we have at least one more item that we want to get to, and I'll turn this over to Chairman Henry.
I believe there's actually two, but one is not listed here. I'll just make a quick point because it's been asked several times, almost every year. I'm surprised it wasn't this year, but we commonly get the question, how's the solar array doing? What's it doing for us? That did come at the budget hearing. We didn't have specific numbers in front of us. So these are the numbers taken off of the Unitil bills that we have here. The town has spent basically $13,700 and change towards Unitil. Of that, our solar production covered $9,173 of it in included credits. And we also received checks for $1,417 in RECs, or renewable energy credits. So percentage-wise, the solar has paid for 77% of our electric bill over the past year and produced 124% of the electricity that we have used as a town.
Good. Yes, sir.
David Collins, Centennial Drive. Thank you, Chair of the Board. I'm the one that asked about that. I hope that this will be placed somewhere we can see it. I was really hoping it was going to be in this report, and when I didn't, I was a little disappointed it wasn't. But please put that out. So I'm about transparency, right? So this is what I go back to. Transparency, accountability. You heard me talk about the school meeting. So we have a capital improvement plan in this town, and the sad part is I don't believe we're following it. I go back to my point about the fire department. We need to look long-term where we're going to be. You're going to be getting a big bill within a period of time. It's coming for the ambulance service. It's going to happen. It's a matter of time. We're not talking about that. That's a real cost to this town. That's going to be a real cost to the taxpayers of this town. We need to start looking at, it's my open floor, we need to start looking at.
Nothing is on open floor in here. Now, you have new business for the town?
Yeah, oh my God, Dave. We're 20 minutes in, give me a minute, okay?
I'll give you 30.
Give me 30 seconds, right? That's how it always seems to go. So basically what I'm telling the select board is the select board going forward at your meetings, you need to look at a comprehensive study on the fire department, on the future costs with the apparatus, because I think you go on board, you're not contemplating those. That needs to happen. I'm bringing it here, Dave, because when you go to select board's meeting, it's you versus the department heads, and that's it. So thanks for not allowing me to talk.
Yes, sir. Your name, sir?
Tom McWilliams, Deer Meadow Road. I would like to make a motion that we increase the small tax abatement that we have for the elderly. And my motion is that income would be no more than $100,000 and net worth would be no more than $500,000 to qualify for the elderly tax abatement.
I'm sorry, you can't do that here. No.
No money here.
No money, no warrant, that's not, the town needs to be alerted to money warrants, money motions.
Okay, so the town was notified, sent them an email, they said they would
No, not that
consider it.
town, not this town, the public. It needed to be in the warrant article if you wanted to change money, if it was a budget issue.
Yeah, I did notify the town officers of my request. And I do have a question. Has anybody ever qualified for the abatement?
This is the elderly exemption we're talking
Yes.
about. So we don't call it an abatement, we call it an exemption, and yes, we do have people that qualify for that.
Can't be very many.
I can't say that because that is non-public.
Okay, well, I will again send another email, and next year, I will
Yes.
expect that
Yes.
this will be
Yes.
voted on,
Yep.
and that the qualification amounts will be increased to something that's more reasonable than what they are now.
And again, it's nothing to do with your thoughts here, it's the rule. Right? Sorry.
Well, I thought I had gone through the right process.
No, it needed to be on the town warrant for people to be aware.
Yep. I had requested it.
I'll make it quick. We just heard one of the previous speakers talk about studies. Studies also cost money. Let's work together as a community. Let's work with our fire department, our administration up here. We'll look at whatever issues come up. People come to the select board, present the issues. We as a group can take a look at those things. I don't think we need a study. I think our fire department, our police department does an excellent job for a little small community. Let's support them. Basically, that. Thank you.
Okay. One last thing before we adjourn. Mr. Henry.
Yes, thank you. As many of you know, we have a wonderful board member that is no longer going to be serving on the board.
Thank you very much. It's been my honor to serve this town for many years. I was the first woman ever elected to be a select woman.
Selectman board member, back when that's what it was called, to then seeing the entire board be women up here. Sorry. He has got to see it all. She has actually not even tried to be on the select board. She's now finally getting to do what she really wanted to do, which was be a trustee of the trust fund. So we thank her with very huge amounts of gratitude for stepping up for the community every single time. And we thank you for all of it. We hope that the rest of your illustrious life will take flight.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded by everybody. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
I know it's not coming through. But that's why it's in the position you're standing. Well, I don't know about I wish I could see my notes. You know, it's not interesting in winning. It's interesting and nobody's anytime seasons change, I'll see you in a year. Having fun. Being with the Good job. Same as getting before no more. Then you think you should read. Thank you. Take care. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Smooth. Hopefully when we do that, we'll get what happened with the school stuff.
Sounds like the first school board meeting was Did they? I'm not looking for Randy We're going to bring you a plan. Your job is to Will someone actually ask them?